Ooh, Seneca Woodworking. We've got some toys to play with. Hi, I'm Paul Marcel. Today I want to review a couple different domino accessories that come from Seneca Woodworking. Now in this box there are also some prototype products, so I'll be showing you some of those, giving you some idea of some of the directions that they're thinking of going in. And I think a lot of these are going to be useful for any domino user, whether you're the 700 Domizilla user or a 500 user. Now, if Seneca Woodworking sounds familiar to you, it's because I previously did a review of a product of theirs, which is the Donna Plate. Now, their new one is fully anodized, and it's laser etched to tell you which side is the 3/4 inch or the 1/2 inch side. And it also contains captured screws for attaching to the base of the domino, where previously you had to supply that from the vertical base. And also to update me, they went ahead and they sent me the knob that now comes with this. So this would actually be the full package that you would get if you were ordering the DomiPlate today, as opposed to what it was when they were first launched. Just so you know, I didn't bleed all over this. I tried to anodize it because it was raw aluminum and it didn't quite work as well as I thought. So now while my review of the DomiPlate that you see on my site uses the older DomiPlate, it's actually the same thing. All the dimensions are the same, so its use is the same, but it's just a whole heck of a lot nicer now. And it comes with all the parts that you need. Now next up in the box of goodies, I've got a new bit. This bit is a 6mm bit for the Domizilla. Now the Domizilla normally comes with an 8 through 14mm bit, so this is going to allow you to use some of the dominoes that you have for your DF-500, so some of the 6mm by 40s. So what this is going to do is it expands the line of bits that you can use with your 700. So this would add one smaller size. Why would you be interested in a bit like this? Because now it makes it that this is able to do some of the mortises that you would be normally doing or preferring a 500 for. It makes your Domizilla a little bit more useful in the realm where the 500 is the most useful. The other advantage of this bit is it's a normal 700 bit, so it's the full length bit, unlike the shorter bit that you would have with your 500, so you get the longer plunge depth. Now this 6mm bit is actually a reground 8. That's what they're doing currently at the time of this recording. This is actually probably going to change in the future. If there's enough demand for this bit, then they're going to be machining them themselves. So what they do is they take a Festool 8mm bit, and then they send it to a CNC regrinder, and they regrind it down to being basically a 6. So you have the same plunge depth limits of an 8mm bit, which is a little bit shorter than the other bits for the 700, such as the 10 here. You can see that there's a difference in the plunge depth that you're going to be able to get with that. So the 8 is a little bit more limited. It goes up to 55mm plunge depth, and this 6 that's been reground is going to have that same limitation. But of course that's still significantly deeper than what you get with the 500. Now of course you're going to have to use your own dominoes to take advantage of that additional depth, since the only 6mm dominoes that are available for the 500 are 40mm deep. But this does open up some other possibilities, especially since the 6mm bit is really popular among people doing work with 3/4 inch ply. So in a production shop, this might be perfect, especially since a production shop might even batch out some cut-to-length stock in 6mm size. Now what do I mean by cut-to-length stock? If you remember on a DF-700 review I did, Festool is now producing these basically sticks. So this is an 8mm stick of domino stock. So if I need a domino of a different length, I can just cut whatever length that I want. Well, you could certainly see a production shop producing things like this in 6mm size to be able to take better advantage of this bit's plunge depth. So this is one of the new offerings from Seneca. If you take a look at the site, one of the unfortunate parts is they have to pay full retail for this bit as well, since Festool doesn't discount tools anywhere. So they take that, then they send it off to a CNC regrinder, makes this bit a little bit more expensive. Right now they're trying to see what the demand is going to be like. Do people want this, or do they want another option that's hiding in this box? So then what's the other thing hiding in the box? Is this little adapter. What this adapter is this will attach to the front of the 700, has the same mounting point of a 700 bit, but you're able to attach 500 bits to them. So in this case here, the 6mm bit that I just had out for the 500, I can screw that onto the tip of this adapter, then I can screw this into the front of the 700, and I can make 6mm mortises. Now the difference between these two is that obviously this one here that's made for the 700 is a regular 700 dimension, is going to be able to make 55mm deep mortises, whereas this is still going to have the same limitation it had with the 500, which is 28mm, about 30mm plunge depth. But this does open up the possibility that if you had the 700 but did not have the 500, you could pick up the 6mm bit and the 5mm bit and be able to use some of the domino tendons that come with the 500. Now, one other thing that's nice about this adapter is that it's a pretty long adapter. There's a number of reasons for doing that, but there are some benefits to you as a user for that. Now, this makes it that if we take out their special bit, these bits are now the same length. That's required in order for the domino mortise, of course, to be the correct width, because it's an oscillating cutter that's cutting. So otherwise the dominoes wouldn't be the right size. So that's one reason. But one of the other nice sort of side benefits of that being the exact same length is that now when you set the plunge depth on your 700, that is the plunge depth. And I say that because in the case of the 500, when they came out with the 4mm bit, you actually set the plunge depth, and then this becomes half of what you are expecting, and also the width is smaller. So the 4mm bit is kind of an odd beast with the 500, but at least here with this adapter, all the regular bits are going to form regular size mortises using the 700 without any goofy math. Now there is something I want to caution you about these two bits, the adapter version and then of course the 6mm bit. This bit is a pretty thin bit and it's pretty long, and when you're running this through some hard wood, of course it's oscillating side to side. Now if you're going to go in there and just put it on the table and plow that in there really fast, odds are you're going to snap that bit and not be really happy. Now next up in the box, this isn't just a prototype, this is a one of a kind. This is a Marcello gauge, and I'm the only one that has it. So they were kind enough to custom print for me with a 3D printer, and this really came out nicely. Marcello gauge. What a Marcello gauge is used for is it's used for setting. So this is really going to be useful for me. So next up in our parts, we got another part prototype that was printed on the 3D printer. Now this is definitely coming out as a real product later, but I've got a pre-release version of it. And what it is, this is actually a part that's for the 500 in this prototype form, but it's going to be adapted to the 700, so we'll talk about that in a moment. So what this is it's a replacement to the thickness gauge. If you remember on the 500, there's a thickness gauge here on the side that lets you quick set the height of this top. Now I call it a thickness gauge because the numbers that are embossed on here are actually intended to be the thickness of the stock that you want to center the mortise into. Now with the 700 they changed it so that it's actually a height gauge. It's a quick set height that matches the height that's on this scale. Now to install this into the domino base, what we're going to need to do, we raise this up to get it as high away from the scale as possible and kind of bend this away. Now you're exposing this screw here to make it a little easier to get at. Now you just need a Torx 10, and then you'll notice that the existing one is captured inside of this metal clip. This metal clip inserts into two little tiny holes here on the bottom. Now if you have like an eyeglass screwdriver or a small modeling screwdriver, you're going to be able to basically push this clip out from inside. I'm not going to say it's the fastest thing, but we'll see how fast it goes. Like that. So you can see that this clip, what it does is it actually grabs on both sides of it, and this rides inside. On the fence itself, there's a bullet catch on here that rides into these little detents that are on the back of the height gauge. So they've modeled that on these as well. So what we can do now is we can slide in this blue one instead. Now the easiest way to do it, you put this piece here onto the V, and then you clip this metal clip over top. Now you're going to push down to get it into those little grooves that we just popped it out of. Now this one being a prototype, it's not the right color. They're going to be doing it a different color, but also they're going to be labeling what the detents are. So taking a look at the 4 steps that are provided on this particular prototype, one of them is a 1/4 inch down center, the other one's a 1/2 inch down center, and we have a 3/8, and then for some reason there's a 7mm plopped in the middle of it all. So this is going to be perfect if you want to center in the middle of 1/2 inch stock, 3/4 inch stock, or 1 inch stock. So these would be really useful if you're dealing mostly with imperial sizes that we have here, especially with the nominal thicknesses of stock. Now I'm going to put this aside a bit, but we're going to be talking about these height gauges in a little bit more with the 700, with the next little toy that came in our prototype box. Now the next toy isn't a prototype, it's actually a product that's being sold right now, and these are called the DomiShims. Now the DomiShim is to the XL 700 what the DomiPlate was to the 500. So the DomiPlate actually attaches to the bottom of the domino where this vertical guide is located right now. And then what you do is you use it upside down. So now this acts as your fence instead of the other one. When you're plowing into 3/4 inch stock, that would center the bit on that stock. So this is how it works with the 500. it goes to use it on the upside down, so actually it takes the fence completely out of the equation. Now to contrast that, the DomiShims accomplish the same type of thing, doing a shimming with the fence. So this one here is not used upside down. So we're not going to be doing like a DomiPlate for this, where you'd have to actually flip it upside down, simply because the machine itself really isn't made to go upside down. So what Seneca has done with this one is that you're going to tip down this fence, and you're always going to use it at a certain known height. You're going to use it at 15 millimeters, which is actually laser etched here on the DomiShim itself. So you'll set it to 15 using the quick height gauge. Just raise that up and drop it down when you got it on the 15 and lock it into place. And now you're going to attach this actually to the fence. Now this just takes a 3 millimeter hex wrench. There are 4 screws on the outside. These outside screws are actually going to pinch the edges of this fence that's on your Domizilla, and then these cap screws here make it so that it just snugs into some holes that are already on your fence. So you're going to see that there are some holes here on the fence. These cap screws are just going to sit in there and basically not wiggle. Just like that. Sort of kidding with the just like that, it actually takes a lot more time to swap out than the DomiPlate does on the DF-700. So the cap screws are in these little holes here to make it a little bit easier to make sure it locks on in the right place. So now with this in place, and I have it at the 15 millimeter mark, I can put this on this deck here, and now I'd be plowing a hole centered into nominal 3/4 inch ply. So currently this is sold as a pair of shims. You get the 3/4 inch shim. You can see it takes a little bit of time to snap it on, and then you have the 1/2 inch shim that to swap between the two, which you might end up doing in a production shop, is a slowdown. So one of the things that they're currently working on, and the reason why I wanted to keep this domino here out with the height gauge, is that they're working on a replacement for this height gauge here on the 700. So what you might end up in the future getting, and I believe that this will happen sooner rather than later, is that you're going to get the plate that's for the 1/2 inch plate, but then there's going to be an additional step on the replacement height gauge that's going to be to set it for 3/4 nominal using the DomiShim. So then you would just simply set it to that other step, still keep the exact same shim on there, and then it'll center it on 3/4 inch stock. So the new version is going to be a whole heck of a lot easier. The price will probably come down because you're not going to be shipping as much aluminum and making as much aluminum. So there's a lot of what ifs coming up out of Seneca here. There's a whole bunch of different things going on. It's interesting that all of these different prototypes that I have here, any variation of the combinations is going to be useful. It's a matter of which ones they end up settling on. But I think if you let them know at this time the different things that you saw here that you liked and the different things that you saw here that maybe you didn't like, if you let them know, then they'll be able to make a product that's going to be really useful. So I'm happy I got a couple prototypes here, and I'm happy I got my Marcello gauge. Yeah, only one. Okay, I intentionally planned on cutting the film when I got to the point of explaining this so that it leaves some intrigue in case you wanted to hang out to the end of the video. And since you did, I'll tell you what it is. If you remember in my no comment build, at one point I was showing using the DF-700 to plow down through both a triangle piece and into a leg. Now, when I did that, the way that you do the placement is you do everything off of a center line. So you want to have the domino go right down through the center line. The easiest way to do that, actually about the only way to do that, is that you're going to reference everything off of this bottom edge of the domino. So what I did is off the center line, I offset it by 15 millimeters, since that's the distance from the center of this domino to the bottom of this base on the DF-700. Now on the 500, that distance is 10 millimeters from the center to the bottom here. So in a number of my projects I've done, especially when you're plowing domino mortises through the sides of a panel, if you're making, say, a bookcase and a shelf, that type of thing, anytime you're doing something in the middle there, you're always dealing with a center line, and you need to get a reference line out where you're actually going to line up the base of the domino. That's where this comes in. So this side here is 15 millimeters thick, and this side here is 10 millimeters thick. So I can put this down on my center line just like a ruler, with the center line on this side here, and then I can take a pencil and I can just draw a line on the other side, and that's where I'm going to have to line up the base of the domino in order to do a plunge that goes right through the center line. So that's what this little guy is. Nothing terribly fancy, but it's a Marcello gauge, and I'm really happy that they sent it to me.